Welcome back. You're watching Business Unusual right here on Newsroom Africa Channel 405. And today, for Job Seekers Wednesday, we're going to be talking through the pros and cons of working from home or remotely, and some of the things you could potentially do to maximize your productivity in your home environment when you turn your home into your office. Now, to help us unpack this a bit further, I'm joined in studio by Phiona Martin. She's an industrial psychologist and a career coach, and also joined by Yvette Aloe, who's a life coach and founder of the Global Village. Yvette and Phiona, good afternoon to the pair of you, and thank you for joining us this afternoon on Business Unusual.
Hi, Ayubonga. Thank you for having us.
Yvette, let me maybe start off with you, and we can maybe talk briefly about why in this day and age people choose, to have people working remotely. I mean, if you look back 20 years ago, I guess that was the rise of the open plan office, and a lot of people realized that open plan probably doesn't lend itself to as much productivity. And then with all of the cost pressures that we see, a lot of people indicated that, look, if you can be as productive working from home, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I think, one of the key drivers for this whole work from home movement is technology. So technology has allowed us to do a lot of things off-site without physically being present.
Yes.
Some of those things are like I can attend a meeting virtually, I can complete most of my tasks, I can access the information that I need. That has sort of changed the way that, people work. And I think another key driver as well is, the most populous group right now in the world of work is your millennials. Yeah. And millennials are very much driven by, they want to be measured on output. They don't want to be bound by time, by space. It's like, if these are my deliverables, how I deliver them at what time, in what location should not matter. So I think those are probably two of the key drivers. And not only millennials, we're actually finding that in the work from home movement, it's not only for people with parental duties, or millennials, but actually I think the workforce generally has a move or a drive towards wanting more work-life balance, and sort of trying to integrate the two without, feeling the conflict, as I think historically has been.
Yeah, yeah. And when you look at it from a perspective of management styles, I mean, I'd be interested, it's entirely a different kettle of fish to manage somebody working remotely than if you had to, say, manage them working from a home. And there's big questions of accountability. Yes. If you've agreed to work from home, we've agreed to a set of deliverables, what then happens when you don't deliver?
Yeah, so actually one of the biggest barriers towards sort of, letting people work from home in terms of, with high intensity is the management style. So I think there's a lot of, questions around, is this the right approach? How do I know the person is actually going to be, doing what they're supposed to be doing? I can't see them, so therefore, how do I trust that they will actually, be delivering on their goals? And also remember, in terms of for you to be able to work from home, you need a lot of self-discipline.
Sure.
You don't have your manager hovering around. I don't have to clock in and clock out. So there's a lot of, I guess, transference on terms of autonomy back to the employer. And some people will even admit themselves that, for me it will be a challenge to sort of have this free range or almost this carte blanche to manage my time as well as manage my home life.
What are some of the tips, Phiona, that one could use working from home? Because it's one thing for me to work on the couch, the same couch where I chill and I watch Netflix and watch all manner of other things. Yeah. But to convert that, even mentally for me, into a space of work and into a space of productivity, one would think requires some stuff. I mean, if I'm there in my slippers and, in my sweatpants, and I'm busy working on a client deliverable, it's fundamentally different to me having sort of mentally prepared myself, dressed up, gone into the office and gotten myself ready to work.
I like how you mentioned the last part about mentally preparing yourself, and that's exactly what it takes for you to become disciplined. Because just because you're not at the workspace doesn't mean you shouldn't still have a ritual that allows you to get into that space, right, mentally. So the first thing I would say is that choose your space. Right? Yeah. Because the way your mind works is that if you go to bed, your mind says, oh, it's time to sleep now. If you go to the living room, it says, oh, it's time to watch television. But if you choose a space within your house or your home, or whatever space that you're working in, and say, okay, this is where I work from, the moment you sit down at that desk, right, then your mind says, oh, it's time to work automatically. That's why sometimes when you pick up your phone, you automatically go to Twitter because your mind is used to going to Twitter, or social media. And another thing is you have to have rituals. You still have to wake up at a certain time and say, okay, I'm going to work out from this time to this time. And then from there on, I'm going to go on and I'm going to go and set my desk at this time and this time and prioritize. Have a list of to-do list of things that you need to get done during the day. So it's exactly what you said about just preparing yourself mentally and having certain routines in place that will allow you to get the work that you need to get done, as well as decluttering your space, right? Because it's difficult to work if there's toys around the house and all of that. So if you have kids that are in the house, maybe have the separate room for them if you can, or if they're at school during the day, then make sure you clean up, you know, prepare that space for yourself so you can make it conducive for your working as well. Yeah. And another tip is that also just find apps that you can use to work from home, sure. Right? So there's apps like Slack, there's apps like VoIP, there's apps like Aircall, right? So you can use those certain apps to assist you in working as well. So if you have a team somewhere else, make sure that you find and do research on what apps can you use to make your life easier, like a reminder app, a tasking app, all those things. I think millennials, just like Phiona over here said, we tend to work on apps.
And when you talk about those apps, like what do the apps do? I mean, you've spoken about a task scheduling app.
Yeah.
But what else would those apps do practically to assist me to be more productive?
All right, so the apps help in terms of communicating with whoever you have to communicate with. So for me as well, I'm also an entrepreneur, and I find that I have a digital marketer who's working from their own space, and I have a web developer who's working from their own space as well. So we need to have alignment in terms of the work that we're doing. So it allows you to attach documents. It allows you to make video calls. The app that I'm specifically talking about is called Slack. So that one allows you to attach documents, you can have video calls, and then instead of waiting to vent on that email, you can immediately go on the app and just put out whatever comment you have on the particular document. So they make it easier for you to work as a team and also to communicate with your clients as well. Because I know for me, one of the struggles that I've had would be I have to update the client and I have to update my team. But when you have a certain platform then that allows you to do all of that on the same space, that it kind of reduces the work that you have and the amount of emails that you have to send out to everybody. Because the thing is, when you work from home, you tend to work more than what everybody else does. You know, and you tend to have, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting up and all of that, you have a lot of things to do. You do the work of an admin person, you do the work. So you need something that will allow you to reduce the amount of workload that you have and kind of like put all the communication that you need to into one space. So it does feel like an office space and not you're working in isolation, because that can also lead to, I guess, putting you in a bad mental space if you feel alone in your journey. So it creates like a corporate culture, a virtual corporate culture. Because I know people that work maybe from Nairobi and they're working in South Africa. So they have a company that their home-based company is in Nairobi, but they're in South Africa and they communicate electronically. So it makes it easier and creates a corporate culture as well to say, okay, on this time we're logging in to have this discussion, I've attached this document, everybody can look at it at the same time, instead of taking, have you looked at it, and emailing it separately to everybody else. So it kind of increases productivity in that regard.
Okay. Yvette, something that Phiona is speaking about, which I think is crucial, is communication. Nothing more frustrating for a manager than to have people working from home. And when you try and call them, you can't get hold of them. So everybody sends an email in the morning, hey, I'm working from home, available on mobile, available on email. And when I call you, because I have a quick question to ask you or I need to follow up on a deliverable, Dololo answer.
So I think this is probably one of the contentious ones. So there is studies that show, you know, communication, particularly within close proximity, is more effective than to sort of, you know, I know we've got all these apps and the way that we can virtually communicate. But as we know, you know, certain things can get lost in translation or the way something sounds over an email. So there have been companies that actually took a stance to recall, I think Yahoo was one, IB was one, where they recalled all the sort of virtual workers back, and they said, okay, people are going to now to be based on site. Because there's something I think they refer to as the water cooler effect. So they've actually found that collaboration, communication is actually, you know, more effective when there is in-person communication. So, you know, me bumping into you in the cafeteria, at the water cooler, at the coffee station, whatever, that actually has been able to sort of foster workplace relations, which are a little bit harder, because I guess if you're working virtually, we're probably going to speak more on a need-to basis. Whereas, you know, if I'm sitting next to you, I can sort of, you know, just, you know, lean over and ask you the question. So because of that collaboration, teamwork, team cohesion, they found that there has been an impact, you know, particularly where someone is based virtually.
But I guess, you know, and this is the other issue here, Phiona, that you live in South Africa, right? And South Africa has a certain kind of spatial reality. So the office might be in Sandton, but the reality is that very few people in this country live close to Sandton. And so there's an implicit cost in trying to maximize the water cooler effect that Yvette was talking about. How do we strike that balance? How do we strike the balance of having people being able to meet in person, to collaborate in that kind of way, but also being fully aware that, you know, there's something that you lose productivity-wise and wellness-wise in having people catching 3 or 4 taxis and a bus to try and get to the office?
Right. I know Phiona and I look alike, but Yvette,
Sorry,
Phiona.
Yvette.
So every time you say the question, we're like
Sorry.
switching up, which is great. So I just wanted to think, yeah. Okay. So I think it's what I do personally is that we set times to communicate. So if you have set times, you say on Monday we communicate on this day, and Wednesday we communicate on this day. This kind of creates a routine. Because I think what creates culture is routine. You know, so even if in a corporate space, because you know at lunchtime you're going to bump into these people, right?
Sure.
So you can still create the same routines virtually. And what I also do is that make sure you meet with the people that you work with. Because yes, as humans, as we evolve, right, we move to everything is digitally and all of that, but we still need to feel connected, right? And what I've realized is that when you don't communicate, when you don't have those relationships and those routines, because it's still just maintaining a relationship. So everything that would apply in maintaining a normal relationship, romantic relationship, applies in work relationships, right? So what you do is you have to have routines to communicate, to say, we speak on these specific days and set those days aside. So no matter what happens, we have to speak on those days so we can stay on the same page. And then also, you can also have other routines to say, let's meet once a month, twice a month, to make sure, again, we're still on the same page. So that applies with your clients, that applies with the people that are on your team as well. So I think, yeah, we do have that need to have physical communication as well. But what I think the basis of it is to have a routine so you don't feel disconnected from the people that you're working with. I mean, I have clients that don't feel, because you know, as humans, we're different, right?
Yeah.
So some people need that face-to-face to feel like they can trust you, to feel like they can know you, right? So creating a routine to say, you know what, because I know you value this kind of communication, then let's create a time every single month to have this conversation as well. And sometimes when you're also training, right? Because I think one of the challenges that I've had in my own business is that you have a new employee, but you need to train them, but they're working remotely, right?
So how do you onboard people that are
How do you onboard people
Yeah.
in that regard, right? So of course you can create virtual systems and.
Yes.
But then when conflict arises, then we have to touch base. So that's when I think for me personally, I created those systems to say, okay, because you're still new, we have to have these certain patterns and routines that we create so that we can maintain the relationship. Because I think business is mainly about relationships.
Sure.
You know, so if we can maintain those relationships virtually, because the moment you don't answer that email at that specific time, people get worried. Why? Because you've created a system, a routine to say, I trust you because you communicate at that time. It's like if you have a partner and they come back at 11 p.m., when they come back at 8 p.m., it's like, how? And then, you know, so it's the same thing when it comes to working relationships, that routines create trust. So I think it's more about creating a routine with your employees, creating a routine with your clients, creating a routine with everybody within your telecommunication system to say, we are going to email at this time, we're going to have a conference call at this time, we're going to touch base at this time, and work it that way. And I think that's, everybody will be happy that way.